That's easy.
I've read that Denis said that even though he's made Dune Part 1, he thought Dune Part 2 was more challenging and harder to make.
Yes.
How was that for you as a visual effects artist?
Well, like basically, we had to ramp everything up. So like there were bigger action sequences. We spent way more time out in the UAE and Jordan. Basically, our set pieces were far bigger than on the first one. But also, on the first one, we saw the worms at dusk, so you didn't really get to see them that well. But this one, full on desert light, so it was challenging. But it was fun.
All right, I'm curious, how much do you guys work with Rick Fraser in post in terms of creating visuals?
Greg comes back towards the end of the production. Basically, like he comes into the DI, and like myself, Denis, and Greg will sit in the DI and like we'll like critique the visual effects. But then prior to that, Greg will have made a color Bible, basically, which like I stick to, and it's been approved by Denis. So it's very much a collaborative effort, but Greg does tend to be a very busy guy, so like he's only available at certain times. Whereas visual effects was on this movie for 22 months, so it was from the very start and to the final shot going through the DO.
Well, you mentioned color, and one of the most striking scenes in the whole movie is when there's a huge absence of color when we see the Arquette's home planet. It's one of the most stunning scenes in the entire movie. What was the thought process into going into that scene and why it had to be black and white again? How was it?
Well, it's a little bit terrifying because like once you commit to that, there's no going back. So there is no way to put the color back, and we had to test a multitude of things, and like one of the things that like we had to test all the screens, we had to test all the actors, and like by accident we found that like you could have two crew members in black t-shirts, and one of them would actually turn white, whereas the other one would stay black, and you couldn't tell with the naked eye as to how things would go. So we tested everything, and the Baron's suit and the Bene Gesserit dresses actually turned from black to white, and Denis absolutely loved it. So, we then came up with techniques to basically shoot particular transition shots with the stereo camera, so that not for stereo per se, but the fact that one of the cameras could be IR and one camera could be a normal RGB one, and then that allowed us to do art-directed transitions really easily. But like one of the things which did catch us out in IR is that we tested everything, and we got to the shoot, and one of the fighters looked great. He had huge muscles, but then when you saw him through IR, he was covered in tattoos, because basically in IR you actually get to see that, whereas like he'd gone through hair and makeup and he looked pristine. But you get to the shoot day, and so there isn't anything you could do. I asked Denis, well, does he actually fit the aesthetic? He said no. But so like we had to do a tricky job to actually clean them up in post.
Obviously, you're proud of the whole movie. It has some amazing sequences. Was there any particular sequence that you're particularly proud of?
There are so many with the different techniques. Like there's one in particular, like towards the end, where like we have the 30-second Shining One. So like it's a 30-second CG shot with performances from Zendaya, who like we actually got into a mocap suit, captured all the Sardaukar fighting, stitched that all together, and then, which like doesn't usually happen, we actually got Greg Fraser to like go back to somebody's point. We actually got Greg Fraser to come back in post for a day, and basically he relensed the virtual world on a virtual stage with Denis, and like that doesn't usually happen. So like we had Greg's camera on the CG environment, which then had to be stitched together to the photography he shot of Zendaya turning around once there's a big explosion on it, and that's a 30-second shot. And it's the most expensive shot in the movie. It was wasn't tricky. It was just a slow progression, but like it worked out really well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.